How's it going, guys? In today's video, we'll be talking about how to optimize OBS on Wayland on NVIDIA. So it's going to be an interesting one because, as a lot of you know, the experience of Linux on NVIDIA drivers is not a very good one. But luckily, the process to make the most out of your drivers is actually quite simple. So I'm going to make the assumption that you already have optimized your Wayland experience on NVIDIA drivers. So assuming that you're on an Wlrobs based compositor, then the rest of this video will continue with those expectations. So let's go ahead and take a look at how to get proper screen sharing on Wayland OBS. So I'm using something called Wlrobs, and this is basically a more direct way of capturing the frame buffer on a Wayland-based compositor. Now, it's not as direct as, say, capturing the raw frame buffer on the GPU, but that route is actually no longer possible because I think of an issue with GBM streams on the new NVIDIA drivers with Vulkan. So what we'll be using is Wlrobs. And let's go ahead and talk about how to actually install this. Now, all of the dependencies and building information, installation and uninstalling information is here on the Wlrobs repository page. I'll go ahead and put a link to this in the description. But for now, let's go ahead and follow the steps. Oh, but actually, let's check first if our package manager supports it. I know for a fact Void Linux does not support it, but if we go ahead and take a look at the Arch AUR and go ahead and give it a search, we can see, oops, made a mistake. We can see that it's not there, and actually it's over here. Okay, quick Google search gave it away. So here it is, Wlrobs HG. Now, it's most likely the case that your package manager doesn't come with it, but it's a very great tool, and let's just go through how to get this plugin installed. So I already have it installed, which is why I'm able to share my screen using it. But if we go ahead and install the libwayland dev, libobs dev, package config, and mesin, and clone these things, let's go ahead and download the tar and extract it. Go ahead and just put it in my home directory for now. Let's go ahead and extract the contents. Okay, now if we go ahead and take a look on our desktop or our home directory, we have the Wlrobs, and after going inside of the folder, we can go ahead and just run these commands, the mesin setup build in Ninja. So you must have these programs on your computer in order for this to run. And as you can see, it was able to build the program and run it. Now, of course, if this doesn't work for you, you're going to have to make sure you have the dependencies installed in the right locations, but that's not in the scope of this video. Now let's go ahead and go into the build folder. And as you can see, we have this this libwlrobs.so file. This is a shared library that will be going into your OBS Studio plugins folder, which is right here. So if we just go ahead and copy this command while we're in the Wlrobs folder, it will go ahead and put that exactly where it needs to be. But I'm not going to do that because I already have it there. And I'll show you right here. So I have it right here in this 64-bit folder. And after doing that, it will show up as a context button inside of OBS. So you just go ahead and choose DMA buff or either SEPI. Now, the DMA buff one is going to be slightly faster as far as I know in terms of performance, but you can go ahead and use whichever one you'd like. Now, the next part that we should discuss is how do you actually use your GPU's encoder so that you can not worry about your CPU overheating. We want to offload all of the hard encoding work to the GPU and not the CPU. And having an NVIDIA graphics card gives us the ability to take advantage of this. So if we go ahead and navigate to the Settings tab in OBS and go to the Output section, we can see that right away we have at the top, and I apologize that it's grayed out as I'm not able to adjust these settings right now, but there'll be like two options here, simple and extended, I believe. Simple and advanced settings or something like that. And actually, I was using advanced for the longest time, but the simple defaults, or not the defaults, the simple customization gives you very fantastic settings to deal with. So if we go ahead and take a look, we have access to bitrate, audio bitrate, the encoder settings, streaming settings, and all of these different things. The main one that you need to enable in order to take advantage of your hardware is the NVENC setting in the video encoder section. So if you navigate to video encoder, you want to make sure you're enabling the NVENC HEVC one. Now there are going to be two hardware encoders. There's going to be HEVC and I believe it's H.264. HEVC is basically H.265 hardware accelerated. So it's basically half the bandwidth as H.264 to maintain the same quality. And there's no performance impact at all. So there's just no reason not to use it. And I would just use whatever encoder presets you want. I'm just using slowest because it really doesn't matter. It does not affect performance at all. Now in recording settings, I like to turn the audio encoder to Opus just because it's much better than anything else pretty much for a lossy audio encoder. And I also like to put my videos in a Matroska container just because it's super flexible. But other than that, you can modify these however you'd like. But in general, I would say these are much better settings than what are usually equipped with these kind of recording softwares. Now, another thing that we should edit is in the advanced section of OBS settings. We really want to adjust the color format to be I444, which is just 4x4x4 planes. And essentially, this just changes the way colors are stored in the video. But the advantage of I444 is that you're getting much better color information than that of the other options. And NVIDIA hardware actually supports it. So I really recommend setting that to I444 because it's really a night and day's difference. And as for the color space and color range, you should probably just keep them at Rec 7 to 9 limited. But if you wanted to, you could maybe go sRGB. I'm not really sure how it's going to affect the scene other than maybe making things dull looking. But that kind of just depends on what kind of monitor you're looking at on it. So maybe it's all right. But I don't really know what I'm talking about. Oh, and another thing that I forgot to mention is back in the output settings, we have access to this thing called replay buffer, which, similar to that of Shadowplay, you're able to record in the past. So you've been playing a game and some epic moment happens. Well, if you have the replay buffer on, you can take a snapshot of what just happened and it will record the last X amount of minutes of gameplay and just save it automatically. And just because we have our output mode on simple, this replay buffer section is enabled by default. However, for some reason on the extended settings, we do not have the ability to use the replay buffer. But yeah, I really recommend using that. Now, another question you might be asking is, how do you actually determine the performance of the encoders and the GPU? How can I verify how hard my GPU is working? Well, you can get this package called NVTop. And if we go to the GitHub page for NVTop, or instead, let's just run it ourselves, you can see that it gives us all this information, like how much memory we're using, how much the encoder is being used as well. And if you're watching videos maybe on MPV, it'll also show how much the decoder is working. We also get things like temperature, which helps with knowing if we're doing too much on our GPU. But importantly, we can see which applications are using what. We have compute programs and graphic programs running on the GPU right now, like my desktop environment, and Firefox, and OBS. Oh, and another very important thing that I forgot to mention is you should enable NVIDIA DRM in your kernel parameters. So in the case of grub, you want to put this right here, NVIDIA DRM.modeset equals 1. Now inside of your etc default grub file, you're going to put it like this, grub underscore command line Linux, and here you will have to include this NVIDIA DRM.modeset as 1. Now doing this basically allows your GPU to access DRM, which is like direct rendering. And then you basically just make the config, this command, and then update grub. Now, maybe you're not on grub. What if you're on refined like me? Well, it's almost the same thing, except it's a little bit simpler. Just go to boot, refined configuration, and then if we go ahead and look in here, you literally just place the NVIDIA DRM modeset is 1 into the string right here, and then it'll just work after a reboot. But probably a more general way to do it is by putting it in your modprobe configuration. Now, if you go to the etc modprobe.d directory, and you just create a new file in here, for example, touch NVIDIA rules dot, well, maybe it doesn't need an extension. let's just say this. And if you go ahead and go into this file, you need to put this options NVIDIA DRM Modeset equals 1. And just like that, you reboot, and same thing. You'll be able to have NVIDIA DRM working on your system. When all of that is working, you'll be able to use OBS with Wlrobs, and the experience will just be a lot better. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll go ahead and leave links in the description for all the websites that I looked at in this video. And if you have any questions, please leave a question or any comments you'd wish. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.